Welcome to AI Appreciate. This show is all about, like diving deep into AI. We'll bring you like interesting ideas from books, videos, and research, all curated just for you.
Yeah, we're not just, skimming the surface. We're giving you a deeper understanding of this crazy, fast-moving field.
Right. So for this first deep dive, we're tackling this groundbreaking book, Thinking Fast and Slow, by Daniel Kahneman. It explores how our minds make decisions, and it's surprisingly fun to read. And we'll also be looking at some discussions about it, to like give you even more context.
Yeah, we'll be looking at this really interesting YouTube video. It makes those complex ideas way more engaging with visuals and examples. And also the book Nudge, which applies these ideas to, like, public policy and everyday life.
Okay, so let's get into Thinking Fast and Slow. Kahneman's big idea is that our brains use two systems for thinking. System one is our quick, intuitive one. It uses instinct and emotion to make like split-second decisions. Then there's system two, which is slower, more deliberate and analytical, but it gets tired out easily.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that we often don't realize how much System 1 is influencing us. It's constantly shaping our perceptions and judgments, often leading us to make predictable mistakes.
And that's where things get really interesting because Kahneman doesn't just point out these flaws. He gives us like strategies to make better decisions. It's almost like he's, helping us upgrade our mental operating systems.
Let's look at some examples from the book that show how these systems work.
Okay. One of the best examples is the illusion of the hot hand in basketball. When a player makes a few shots in a row and everyone thinks they're unstoppable, like the next shot is guaranteed to go in.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like they can't miss.
Well, statistically speaking, as Kahneman points out, the hot hand is an illusion. Our system one is wired to see patterns, even when they don't exist. We connect those successful shots and think there's some magical reason, but it's just random chance.
So our brains are, like, tricking us. Exactly. It's the same with the gambler's fallacy. Like, if a coin lands on heads 10 times, people think it has to land on tails next. But each flip is independent. The odds reset, but System 1 has trouble with that.
Wow, that's wild. It makes you wonder what other illusions we're vulnerable to.
That's what Kahneman explores in the book. Another great example is anchoring, which is how our judgments can be swayed by totally irrelevant information. Kahneman did this experiment where he asked people to estimate the percentage of African nations in the United Nations.
Okay, and how does that show anchoring?
So before asking about the UN, he had people spin a wheel. It was rigged to land on either 10 or 65. Seems totally random, right? But here's the thing. Those who spun a 10 guessed lower percentages than those who spun a 65, even though the wheel had nothing to do with the question.
So that number on the wheel, it like anchored their estimates without them realizing it.
Precisely. This bias pops up everywhere, from salaries to, like, online shopping. If you're aware of it, you can avoid being influenced by these random numbers.
That's so helpful. It's like having, a secret weapon against marketing tricks and stuff.
Exactly. Thinking fast and slow gives you this knowledge. Now let's move on to another interesting idea, the world better. Loss aversion.
Okay, what is loss aversion? How does it, affect our choices?
Basically, loss aversion means losing something hurts us twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good.
Interesting. So we're like more afraid of losing than we are excited about winning.
Yeah, that's the gist. And this really affects our decisions, especially with investing or taking risks.
Okay, can you give us an example? How does this like play out in real life?
Sure. Imagine you're offered a bet. 50% chance to win $200 or a 50% chance to lose $100. Would you take it?
That's a tough one. I think most people would say no, even though you could win more than you could lose.
Exactly. See, that's loss aversion right there. We're so focused on avoiding losses that we miss opportunities where the potential gain is bigger than the risk.
Right, that makes sense. So how do we like overcome that loss aversion thing?
Well, one way is to reframe how we think. Instead of focusing on the potential loss, look at the big picture. Let's say you're afraid to invest because you might lose money. Remind yourself that over time, the market usually goes up.
So it's about like not getting caught up in those short-term losses.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, Kahneman also talks about something called the peak end rule. It explains how we remember experiences.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about this peak end rule. What's that all about?
So the peak end rule says that our memories of experiences, good or bad, are mainly determined by two things: the most intense moment the peak, and then how the whole thing ends.
So it's not about how long it lasts, but like the strongest part and the final impression.
Exactly. To show this, Kahneman did an experiment where people had to put their hands in ice water for a while.
Ouch. That sounds pretty awful.
Yeah, not very fun. But here's the thing. One group had their hands in the cold water for less time, while the other group had it in there longer. But the second group had slightly warmer water at the end.
So the second group had more discomfort overall, but it ended less painfully.
Exactly. And you know what? When asked which experience they would rather repeat, most chose the longer, colder one, just because it ended a little better.
Wow, that's incredible. So a bad ending can really overshadow a good experience, at least in our memories.
Yeah, that's right. And this is really important for like designing anything, really, products, services, even just interactions.
Yeah, it makes you think. We focus so much on first impressions, but maybe we should care just as much about the last impression.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to another cool concept, the remembering self.
Okay, hit me with it. What's the remembering self?
So the remembering self is the part of us that looks back on stuff and judges it. It's the storyteller, the one creating our personal narratives. But here's the thing. The remembering self isn't always accurate. It doesn't always match up with the experiencing self, the one who actually lived through those moments.
Wait, so you're saying there are like two versions of ourselves, one experiencing things now and one looking back later.
You could say that, yeah. And because, like we said, the remembering self is influenced by things like the peak end rule. Our memories aren't always a true picture of what actually happened.
That's fascinating. So how do we make sense of that, our experiencing self and our remembering self?
It's about, being aware of that difference, recognizing that our memories are just our interpretations, not necessarily the objective truth.
So don't always trust your memory. Got it. But how does this connect to, AI?
Well, if you think about it, understanding how our memories work, how they can be changed or distorted, that's really important for designing AI that interacts with us, with our experiences.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you're building an AI for customer service. Understanding that peak end rule is huge for making sure people have good experiences. Even if there are problems along the way, ending on a good note will make customers remember it more positively overall.
So it's about building AI that understands us,
Yeah.
like how we actually think and behave.
Exactly. Now, let's look at a real-world application of Kahneman's ideas. We can see this in the book Nudge.
So we've been talking about nudge, right? What exactly is a nudge? How does it fit in with all this thinking fast and slow stuff?
Well, a nudge, it's how they describe it in the book by Thaler and Sunstein.
Yeah.
It's a subtle way to influence what people do, but without limiting their choices.
So it's not about making people do things, but more like gently steering them towards a better choice?
Exactly. And nudges work because they use the way our system one thinking, naturally operates.
Can you give us an example? How would a nudge actually work?
Sure. A classic example is using defaults. Automatically putting employees into a retirement plan unless they choose to opt out.
Oh, right. Because opting out takes effort, right?
Yeah.
People are more likely to just stick with the default, even if it wasn't what they were originally planning.
Exactly. Nudges work because they make the better choice, the easier choice, and we tend to, take the path of least resistance.
That's pretty clever. It makes you realize how much stuff influences our decisions that we don't even think about.
Absolutely. And this has huge implications, especially now with, AI getting more and more advanced. Imagine an AI health app that nudges you to be healthier.
Oh, like reminding you to go for a walk or recommending recipes based on what you bought at the store.
Exactly. If we understand how our minds work, we can design AI that helps us make better choices almost without us even realizing it.
So it's not about AI controlling us, but AI helping us be our best selves.
Exactly. And that's why thinking fast and slow is so important. It's not just about us understanding ourselves. It's about using that understanding to build a better future with AI.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. We've covered so much. But, it makes you wonder, where do we go from here? How do we make sure AI is used to benefit everyone?
That's the big question, isn't it? I think it starts with awareness. The more we understand our own minds, our biases, the better we can navigate this whole world of AI.
So we need to keep learning, keep talking about this stuff. Think about the impact of this technology.
Absolutely. And as we've been saying, it's not just about the technical stuff, but also the ethical side, how it affects society. We need to have those conversations now to make sure AI is used for good.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into AI and how our minds work. Don't forget to check out the AI podcast playlist on our channel for even more on these important topics.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.